Tom, the police department right now is standing behind its officer, an 11-year veteran of the force who says he fired his weapon fearing for his safety. But the mother of the man he shot says her son didn't deserve to die. This is the back alley behind a Northwest Side strip center where 26-year-old Jordan Baker took his last breath, shot and killed by an off-duty police officer working security.
That's my only son, and it's just not right.
Janet Baker heard what the police department said about the shooting, that the officer thought Jordan matched the description of some robbery suspects who recently held up 3 different stores in the strip center. Baker says that's not her son.
He's not the way they portrayed him. He's a father, he's a grandson, he's a son, and just taken away.
He was doing everything right. He was going to school, he was working, he was taking care of his son.
According to police reports, the off-duty officer saw Jordan Baker riding his bike and peeking into businesses Thursday night around 9 o'clock. When the officer asked Baker for an ID, he said there was a scuffle and a foot chase, with the officer finally cornering Baker in the alley. The officer says Baker charged toward him, and that's why he fired.
I don't believe that that's what occurred. I believe that that's him trying to justify the outcome of what has happened.
Baker says her son was taught to respect the police even if he felt wrongly accused. She can't imagine him risking his life by physically challenging an armed officer.
I know he wouldn't. He had too much to live for.
Baker obviously very distraught. She says she hasn't even been able to see her son's body yet and has not yet been able to make funeral arrangements. The family is considering hiring an attorney. We're live outside Houston Police Headquarters. Simon Gutierrez, 13 Eyewitness News. Tom, what happened next was a shootout out here in this neighborhood. The suspect hiding in the backyard of this home here behind me when he was finally taken into custody. Police say this man is one of 2 suspects involved in a home invasion this morning, holding a gun to the head of a man coming home from church and forcing him into his apartment.
They demanded to know what kind of a car he drove, and he told them what it was, that it was a red Dodge Charger.
After stealing the man's cell phone and TV, one of the suspects took his car, which was spotted by an officer the victim flagged down.
The suspect refuses to stop and goes at a high rate of speed to the Woodridge exit.
There, the suspect hit another vehicle and bailed out, running into a neighborhood where he was spotted by another officer.
And the officer is in the driveway of the residence, and the suspect is now in the backyard near a fence when he fires at the officer.
The officer returned fire and the suspect ducked away. This man, who spoke only Spanish, says the suspect was hiding in his backyard under a tarp. He told the officers, who sent in a police dog.
And he starts pulling up on the tarp and then sees the suspect's hands and feet, and that's when our officers went and took the male into custody.
The man who was initially robbed later came to the scene and confirmed the suspect in custody is the one that held a gun to his head. And fortunately, none of the bullets flying around out here today hit anyone. The suspect is facing a long list of charges, including potentially attempted murder of a police officer. The other suspect in that initial home invasion remains at large. We're live in Southeast Houston. Simon Gutierrez, 13 Eyewitness News. Good morning. According to police, the off-duty officer was contracted to work security here at this strip center after a string of armed robberies. Now, folks that work here say this Little Caesars back here was the last place to get held up.
I'll be right back.
For a while now, employees at the businesses in this strip center on Little York have been watching their backs.
We keep our door locked. Anybody that comes to our door, we just keep it locked so they can't come in without us getting up and opening the door.
A series of armed robberies at 3 different businesses have folks here wondering who's next.
When I see you guys outside, I'm like, what happened now? Who got robbed? We're very scared.
Last night, the insecurities surrounding the property ended in gunfire. An off-duty officer hired to work security here spotted a man who matched the description of the robbery suspects, who typically wore dark hooded sweatshirt.
The officer asked him for identification, and the suspect refused to provide any, stating he didn't have any, and then he told the officer that he was not going to jail.
According to police, the man tried to walk away, but the officer drew his weapon and ordered him to stop. The man got down on the ground, but when the officer holstered his weapon to handcuff him, they say the man jumped up, struggled with the officer, then took off running. The officer chased him, finally cornering him in the alley behind the strip center.
Turns towards the officer, puts his hands again in his waistband, crouches down, and charges the officer, telling the officer, "I told you I'm not going to jail."
Police say the officer, fearing for his safety, fired one shot, hitting and killing the man. Workers here don't know if that man had anything to do with the robberies. The shooting, if anything, puts them a little more on edge.
They say they've caught them. They say they may be the same ones around the area, but we really don't know who they are.
According to police, the officer who fired his weapon is an 11-year veteran of the force. He'll be placed on administrative leave while the shooting is investigated. As for the man he shot, he has not yet been identified. We're live in Northwest Houston. Simon Gutierrez, 13 Eyewitness News.